Hello, I'm Lindsay McSweeney. We're here today to present about Antioch Public High School's counselors.
And I am Olusola Adefurin.
I'm Megan Wu.
I'm Cedric Duncan.
And I am Marlon Douglas. So, we are doing a project on Antioch High School counselors. There you go, next slide. Just a little background on Antioch High School. It has history dating back to 1932. It has approximately 2,200 students, 9th through 12th grade. And very interesting, their vision statement is to inspire and prepare students to be confident in their abilities and ultimately use the knowledge and skills acquired here at AHS to become productive and responsible citizens. So as you can see here, here's a pathway to just show the amount of students that go to Antioch, starting with the elementary level from K through 4. You have certain schools here, and then they transition to the middle school segment. We have schools here, and then they all transfer over to Antioch High School, which shows that there is a lot of students who actually go to Antioch High School. And here is an organizational chart that will show the actual breakdown of the hierarchy at the school. So at the top, we just have the executive principal and the vice principal. But more interesting is the academy principals. So Antioch High School has 6 total academies. It's called Business Finance, Teaching and Serving, Hospitality and Marketing, Automotive and Technology, and the 9th grade academy. So as you can see, there is a principal for each of those academies. And then below them, there are 4 deans that report directly to the academy principals. But as you can see here, Dean number 4, they actually have 2 academies that they're actually in control of. But then, and as you trickle down to the next segment, we have a lead counselor here, which is over the career and college academy. And then we have 5 other counselors that our project is going to be about, is these counselors here. As you can see, school counselors, and even at Antioch High School, has a variety of things that they do on a daily basis, such as their mentors. They help solve school crises. They do scheduling, they do transcripts, they do conflict resolutions, small group interventions. They talk about topics such as bullying, pregnancy situations, school violence. So they have a lot of different things that they have to tackle each and every day. Next slide. So we actually did some interviews with 2 of the actual counselors, and just a couple of actual interview things that they spoke about on certain topics, such as what is the best way to handle stress. Well, counselor 1 said, I have to release it. I have a counselor that I speak with to find out that a student has been raped or molested. It's kind of hard not to need someone else to talk to rather than holding it in. So that just shows actual counselor actually having to talk to someone else to handle the internal stress that they may deal with in regards to the stress that they deal with on the job. Another question that we asked, is there enough time during the day to complete daily tasks? The second counselor said scheduling takes a lot of time, going to each class in their academy and to discuss graduation requirements and what is needed for moving forward. Then we have to manually input each schedule on top of random pop-up meetings, mobile crisis calls, suicidal students, and DCS calls. So as you can see, just as the teacher, just as the counselor has to go through each individual class, they also still have to adhere to what can go on during the day that may not take up time, that will take up time from them actually doing what they should be doing in regards to going to the class and talking to them about graduation requirements and things like that. Next slide. And this was actually another interesting question that we asked the 2 counselors, just trying to figure out the correlation between years worked and perceived stress, and also the number of students cause stress, or is it just the nature of the job? So the first counselor said that part of it is about the amount of stress, with me having almost 400 students, and that's just one counselor, even if I get out of a week 10 students to tell me that they're suicidal, that is a lot mentally. If I had 200 students and I only have 5 students tell me that they're suicidal, it will be at least a little better. To hear so many times there are a lot of kids going through a lot, and you can become attached to some of them. With the number of students, it is really hard, and I know I can't help everyone, but I want to. So this just shows the amount of students that the counselor actually deals with on a regular basis. However, hearing that so many times, dealing with so many different students, it takes a toll on the actual counselor. Same question was asked to the second counselor, and her statement went, I think it varies from day to day, but I think they are as equally stressful. Student stress weighs on me more mentally. You feel emotionally drained, but the work stress, you feel frustrated and angry. I think more burnout comes with years of experience, especially if you do not do self-care. So it was a very important point that she actually brought up, was the difference between work stress and student stress. And so work stress is just the actual nature of the job. But student stress can be emotionally drained because you can become attached to the actual student. Next slide.
So the methods that we use to obtain the information from the counselors is, the first thing we did was the video interviews. And in the video interviews, we asked a series of questions. But not only did we ask a series of questions, but we also we met at a coffee shop and got them some food and some coffee. And so it was kind of a very social setting. So they felt a lot more comfortable with talking to us, and even we would ask them questions, and they would divert off topic and give us story after story after story. So it really helped a lot being in that social setting. And so that was one of the methods that we used. And then the next method that we used was through surveys. And so they were able to take home surveys, and even in the comfort of their own home or at work, they were able to complete the surveys. And as you see, it was with 17 multiple choice questions and 4 short answer choices. So they could write as much as they wanted. And then we had 3 counselors participate. So we had a good amount of information that they were able to give us from the topic.
So, looking at the overall trend, we see that counselors have similar answers to each of the questions. Like we see that I concentrate on the aspect where they did disagree. You can see that, it's area of work is fair and equally distributed, or my role and responsibility are clearly defined. My school maintains a high level of quality in the work we do. There are opportunities for growth in my position, or I have enough time during the work day to complete my tasks, or my school does a good job notifying me of any changes affecting us. Those are the areas where they did strongly disagree. And when I look at that compared to the area where they either strongly agree or agree, I can see that a lot of the areas where they did disagree are areas where, it's the school that has to do something. It's based on the school program and the format. When you look at the work itself, some of them they do agree. For example, my relationship with my students are positive, my work is interesting, I have a great work-life balance, and so on. So in these areas where they did strongly disagree and it's more connected to areas where maybe the way the work is structured, or for example roles and responsibility where maybe the school has to be maybe more flexible. But hold on, before you go. So in the next slide, we're going to really break this down into, for example, positives and also mixed reactions. So for the positive result, like we saw in the other slide, counselors felt very positive about the person environment fit. For example, looking at the graph, you can see that they did strongly agree to the fact that my job makes good use of my skill and abilities. They did also strongly agree to the fact that they feel encouraged to develop and innovate solutions as well. Also, positive results from the interview was they felt that their work gave them a sense of accomplishment, and they also felt that their work is interestingly engaging. Also, they felt that they had good relationship with their bosses, and also good relationship with their students. So I'll hand over to Megan.
So here's some areas where the survey results were mixed. And that means the survey did not necessarily agree with each other. They were mixed about diversity, growth potential, and whether work was fair and equally distributed. These topics should be examined further. For example, if some say there's opportunities for growth, but others disagree, there may be a career trajectory or growth pathway that could be mapped. If one counselor strongly feels that work is equally distributed, but another disagrees, then maybe we should look at what the counselors who feel that work is unfairly distributed have to say about being overburdened. So the first survey says the school encourages diversity. 2 agreed, but 1 was neutral. The second, there are opportunities for growth in my position. 1 counselor agreed, 1 was neutral, and 1 disagreed. Work is fair and equally distributed. This one is particularly interesting because we have 1 person saying they strongly agree that work is equally distributed. 1 person is neutral and 1 person disagrees. Addressing communication. So another theme that we saw was communication. We wanted to see where things were going right and where things were going wrong. The first survey says, I feel valued by upper level staff of the school. All 3 counselors agreed on that. My bosses value my feedback. 1 agreed and 2 were neutral, so this may be a point that the school could improve upon. My school does a good job notifying me of any changes affecting us. Here, we see 2 counselors disagreeing and 1 counselor strongly disagreeing. So this is definitely something that the school should take into account on improving. Negative results. So there were 3 major concerns. 1 is having adequate time to complete tasks. The second is maintaining a high level of quality. This is affected, as Marlon said earlier, by them having such a large number of students, as well as not having enough time to do tasks. And the third thing is addressing stress in the workplace. This may also be a symptom of the increased number of students that they're having to counsel, and also the nature of the work. So here on the first survey, do you have enough time during your day to complete your task? 1 was neutral, 1 disagreed, and 1 strongly disagreed. My school maintains a high level of quality. 2 were neutral and 1 disagreed. And there are things throughout my day that cause me some level of stress. All 3 agreed on that topic. Other negative results include the school may need to address defining counselors' roles versus the roles of higher-ups, so that they both have clear definitions of what the counselor's workload is. This would also help address the work-life balance. So we see in the first survey, my roles and responsibilities are clearly defined. 2 are neutral and 1 disagrees. And we also see on this survey, I have a great work-life balance. 1 strongly agrees, 1 agrees, and 1 is neutral.
So some of the takeaways that we had from the survey, from all the surveys and from the videos, was that a lot of them really wanted the direct career path or career trajectory for future growth. So when it comes to if they want to move up or try to become or go to a higher learning grad school, or if they want to be a principal, they wanted a clear vision of that for their job roles. And they also wanted to take a look at the workload that each of them are given, because I think they wanted to balance it out and make sure that everybody was given the same amount of work. And also the communication line with the bosses. And I remember some of them mentioning that they didn't feel that all their bosses knew exactly what they were doing. And so I feel like if they were able to see that their bosses knew what they were doing, they would feel more valued in the workplace. And so that was the key takeaway from that. And then they wanted a notification system. So we talked about a daily huddle every for 5 minutes, just to let people know what was going on for that day. If people had changed dates for a certain event, then it would help to talk about it in that daily huddle. And as well as having a Facebook group or some type of website to notify all the teachers a lot earlier would help in different senses. And then also the administrative work, they talked a lot about that and being overloaded with work. And we're in the earlier segment talking about how basically they have supposed to be assigned around 200 students, but actually have more closer to around 400 students a counselor. So just having more work at home days to finish their administrative work would help in their counseling process for sure. And then also increasing hiring. I know they talked about either having part-time workers would help with the workload because they have so much administrative work that they have to do along with doing their regular counseling duties, with talking to kids, and as well as dealing with any type of incidents that may come up during the day. And also just reducing stress. So having an exercise program, meditation program, and they also talked a lot about self-care in the sense of like they talked about there was a lot of stress with the older teachers because they had been there longer, and sometimes they just get fed up with the kids. And so just taking care of yourself, so going to spa, taking massages, and those are a couple of the takeaways that we had from the surveys.
All right. Now what we're going to end with is the actual leave behind. So we had to come up with an organizational diagnosis, which we've recapped here. But the leave behind that we want to give the Antioch school teachers, and this is really going to hopefully be a benefit to the school, the teachers, and the counselors themselves, is this, I'm going to call it a selling story. So essentially, we want them to walk through with their bosses what their day-to-day looks like. So their weekly tasks, they're tasked with teacher and parent meetings. Unfortunately, a lot of these can be impromptu meetings that just come up kind of out of nowhere if the parent shows up at their office. They have student graduation check-ins, their data entry, which takes a lot of time, monitoring progress, student transcripts, and when a student does transfer into Antioch Public School Systems, they have to translate those transcripts into their system, which can be a really tedious process. They have student management, crisis management, and then class planning and actual time in the classrooms. So they said multiple times in the interviews that what they really wanted to do, number one, was to have earlier outreach to students. Most of the times, because they're monitoring graduation requirements, they're not seeing students until their junior or senior year. So they don't really have an opportunity to get to know freshmen and sophomore, and they voiced that as being an opportunity for them to focus on in the future if they have the time to do so. They also voiced that they would like to get into the classroom more often. So it is part of their job description to be inside of the classroom teaching on topics such as peer respect. One thing that I had added here was personal finance and budgeting, which is actually something that a lot of high schools are doing now to teach students how to take out their first credit card, or even setting up an account with a bank, because depending on your background or your parents, maybe that's something that you haven't done before at that age. And they expressed that they wanted to do this more often, but they never really have the time for lesson planning. So their goal is to stay focused on these tasks, and then this is how they're going to get there. So hopefully the presentation for their bosses. Number one, the counselors say that the number one obstructions to goals is interruption from impromptu meetings and unexpected student situations. And actually the same concern is voiced nationally by employees. And that's actually why there's kind of a trend in work from home employees. So we looked at some of the data to see how productive work from home employees are. 40% of employees consider impromptu meetings from coworkers stopping by their office space as a major distraction. 86% of employees prefer to work alone to hit maximum production. And then finally, working in 90-minute intervals maximizes productivity. So the proposed solution to get to a point where counselors are working at their highest productivity to get things like data entry and class planning done is that the counselors will rotate a work from home Friday to focus on clerical work such as data entry and lesson planning. There are 6 counselors in the Antioch Public School District, so each counselor essentially gets a Friday every 6 weeks. And then that counselor that's out of office, the other 5 that are in the office will pick up any student needs that day while that person works from home. And then we wanted to lay out for the school, again, making this a selling story of why they should get this work from home day, what the rounded out benefit for everyone is. So number 1, the counselor benefit is more focused time for administrative and strategic planning work. The school benefit is more timely turnaround on transcripts and data tasks, and then also you're going to have more refreshed counselors. And finally, the student benefit is earlier engagement with counselors and presence of the counselors in the classroom. This is all part of their job description, but unfortunately it's things that can fall to the wayside because of the amount of work that they deal with on a daily basis. And with that, that's all that we have. Thank you for listening to our presentation and hoping that we can help the Antioch Public School counselors have a better 2019-2020 school year.